There we go. Good afternoon. The Secretary General is now on his way to Addis Ababa in Ethiopia, where he'll be attending the 37th African Union Summit. A few hours ago in Munich, in Germany, he delivered remarks at the opening session of the Munich Security Conference. The Secretary General told participants that today's global order is not working for everyone or even for anyone. As our world is facing existential challenges, the Secretary General said the global community is more fragmented and divided than any time in the past 75 years. Turning to the situation in Gaza, he said it's an appalling indictment of the deadlock in global relations, warning that an all-out offensive on Rafah would be devastating for the 1.5 million Palestinian civilians there who are already on the edge of survival. He reiterated his call for an immediate and unconditional release of all hostages, as well as a humanitarian ceasefire. That, Mr. Guterres said, is the only way to massively scale up aid delivery in Gaza. Immediately after his remarks, the Secretary General took part in a panel discussion with Mia Mottley, the Prime Minister of Barbados, Nana Akufo-Addo, the President of Ghana, and Gustavo Petro Urrego, the President of Colombia. Oh, yeah, sorry, I know you clearly were not paying attention. Throughout the day, he also met with leaders attending the conference. A couple of notes to share with you, notably regarding the death of Alexander Navalny. The Secretary General is shocked by the reported death in detention of opposition figure Alexei Navalny. The Secretary General expresses his condolences to Mr. Navalny's family and calls for a full, credible, and transparent investigation into the circumstances of Mr. Navalny's reported death in custody. I also have something to share with you on Senegal. The Secretary General takes note of the Constitutional Council's ruling on declaring the postponement of the presidential elections in Senegal as unconstitutional, and of President Macky Sall's decision to fully implement the decision by the Constitutional Council. The Secretary General urges all national stakeholders to ensure the holding of an inclusive and transparent presidential election within the framework of the Constitution of Senegal. Turning to the situation in Gaza, the Office for the Coordination of Humanitarian Affairs tells us that intensified airstrikes on Rafah continue. People are reportedly moving out of Gaza's southernmost governor toward Deir al-Balah. Meanwhile, a consistent and dependable food supply to serve the entire population of Gaza continues to be hindered by frequent border closures, long-standing import restrictions of goods into Gaza, damage to critical infrastructure, and as well as the security situation. Food insecurity in northern Gaza and Gaza governorates has especially reached an extremely critical state, given significant restrictions on the delivery of humanitarian assistance. In Rafah, humanitarian conditions have become increasingly severe, with continued reports of people stopping aid trucks to take food. Vulnerable segments of the population include children, the elderly, and people with underlying health conditions, and are particularly susceptible to the risk of malnutrition. This weekend, our Deputy Secretary General, Amina Mohammed, will travel to Bangkok, Thailand, to attend the 11th session of the Asia-Pacific Regional Forum for Sustainable Development. She will engage with the Regional Coordination Mechanism. She will also meet with the UN resident coordinators in the region, as well as senior government officials, and, of course, other stakeholders, all of this to advance the action on the Sustainable Development Goals. And also discuss the lead up to the Summit of the Future. She will then travel to Brazil to participate on behalf of the Secretary General at the G20 Foreign Ministers meeting. The Deputy Secretary General will then go to Namibia to take part and represent the United Nations at the state funeral of the late president of Namibia. She will be back in New York on the 26th of February. Also traveling is Jean-Pierre Lacroix, the head of the Peacekeeping Department. He will be in South Sudan in Abyei from the 18th to the 23rd of February. He will be accompanied by Hannah Tete, the Special Envoy of the Secretary General for the Horn of Africa. The purpose of the visit to South Sudan is to assess progress made on the peace process and the preparations underway for the upcoming elections, the country's first since independence, that was scheduled in December. for December, excuse me. In Juba, they are expected to hold meetings with leaders of the Transitional Government of National Unity, civil society representatives, and other key stakeholders involved in the peace process. Mr. Lacroix and Madame Tete will also visit the UN peacekeeping force in Abyei and engage with the Juba-appointed chief administrator, Khartoum-appointed administration officials and traditional leaders, as well as women's groups and civil society organizations. They will also use a visit to assess the prevailing situation in southern Abyei following the increasing intercommunal violence that we have seen, as well as the peacekeeping mission's continuing efforts to protect civilians and do whatever they can to de-escalate those intercommunal tensions. Mr. Lacroix will also interact with civilian and uniformed peacekeeping personnel in South Sudan and Abyei and thank them for their dedication and service in a very challenging environment. Today is Global Tourism Resilience Day. Now, I know you're Global Tourism Resilience Day. As you know, sustainable tourism, including ecotourism, can contribute to the Sustainable Development Goals by fostering economic growth and creating full and decent work for all. Lastly, 2 member states have paid in full, and our quiz mistress, Jane Gaffney, has outdone herself, and I think on the level of Will Shortz, the New York Times quizmaster, for those of you who listen to him on the weekends. Of the 2 member states which paid their dues in full today, both countries' currencies contain the same 4 letters, but in a different order. Okay, so I will give you the first one is currency known as the Lari, L-A-R-I. Georgia, very good. Now take those same 4 letters, rearrange the Rial. From which country? Brazil. The Saudi Arabia, exactly. So it is the Georgian Lari and the Saudi Rial. That takes us to 60 fully paid member states. We thank our friends in Riyadh and Tbilisi. And as Mr. Haq observed, if the euro didn't exist, we'd also have the lira. But there we go. Edie.
Apologies for being slightly late, and perhaps you said this, but does the Secretary General have any reaction to the death of...
Yes, we did. That we started off with that.
Okay.
We'll share those remarks.
Secondly, on Gaza, can you tell us whether the UN has gotten any information about the Israeli plans to evacuate the 1.5 million Palestinians there?
No, not that I'm aware of.
And where is Sigrid Kaag?
Sigrid Kaag, we expect on the Sigrid Kaag bingo game, I would choose Brussels for Monday. She will be meeting with European Union folks in Brussels. Deji.
A follow-up. Does the UN have any discussion with Egyptian government and Israeli government on letting those Palestinians get seek refuge in Egypt?
I mean, listen, we are in touch on a daily basis with Israeli officials at the working level, with Egyptian officials as well, because we operate in humanitarian terms. Our focus right now is on the humanitarian situation in Gaza, and as I've said many times, not be part of any forcible displacement of
But
people.
if those people, they want to move, let's say, go into Egypt, should they open the border?
I'm not going to. Everyone should do whatever they can to ensure that people stay alive, get the humanitarian aid they need.
Any, I haven't finished. Sorry, several other questions. Any bilaterals by the Secretary General in Munich?
Yes, he met with Josep Borrell, the head of the European Union's foreign policy apparatus. This was on the sidelines of the Munich conference. He also met with the president of the European Commission, Ursula von der Leyen, the president of the Iraqi, the Kurdistan region, Mr. Barzani, Nershavan Barzani, and Robert Golo, the Prime Minister of Slovenia. Most of those discussions focused on the situation in the Middle East.
He didn't meet with any of the Israeli delegation or Palestinian delegation.
He did not.
Why? May I ask?
Those meetings did not happen.
Okay, I have another question, but maybe.
Thank you so much. Madame.
Thank you. Camelia, the independent person. Dear Stéphane, as everyone knows, the terrorist activities of the Taliban are not hidden. And the Secretary General will host a meeting soon this month in Doha. I would like to know if the serious concerns of the people of Afghanistan, especially women banned going to work and the girls to school, be raised at this conference?
Of course.
Thank you.
The center point of our concern and of our work in Afghanistan has been the restoration of the dignity, the human rights of women and girls. This meeting will be a meeting of envoys on Afghanistan, so both from regional organizations, from member states. There will be a meeting with the Taliban, but there will also be a meeting of envoys with civil society, including women's groups, because it's important that the voices of Afghan women be heard very loud and clear.
Thank you.
Abdelhamid, then Stefano, then Celia.
Thank you, Stéphane. It looks like the battle in Rafah is coming. All appeals had failed. I mean, the Secretary General appealed for that, not to see the Battle of Rafah. The High Commissioner for Refugees, High Commissioner for Human Rights, yet Israel continues planning to start a very tragic battle in Rafah, which maybe 1,000 people will be killed. What else the UN can do other than tapping Israel on the fingers?
Well, I mean, I'm not going to agree with your characterization of our work, but I can tell you that we keep passing the same messages publicly as we do privately. The Secretary General continues his contact with other global leaders to ensure that everybody is with the same goal, with the same immediate goal, which is a humanitarian ceasefire, increased and unhindered access for humanitarian assistance, and the immediate and unconditional release of the hostages. And that will continue to guide the Secretary General's work.
But this is not doing any difference. This state is above international law. They don't listen to anyone, and they continue.
I mean, Hamid, the Secretary General has the authority and the powers that he has, the tools that he has. He's using it, and it's important that the international community speak with one voice on this. Stefano, then Celia.
Thank you, Stéphane. About the death of opposition leader, Russian opposition leader Navalny. Many leaders around the world at the moment are saying that somehow, in a way or another, the Russian government is responsible for his death. Now, you just read that Secretary General Guterres is asking for a credible investigation. What does mean credible? Exactly what you expect.
Credible means that's something that can be believed.
Okay, so can you give us some, what should be, what kind of investigation can be credible
It just needs to, credible means something that can be believed.
So
I would also refer you to the rather long statement from the High Commissioner for Human Rights, noting that any state has a heightened duty to protect the lives of individuals deprived of liberty, meaning of individuals who are incarcerated.
So there is no any request for eventually, if this investigation end up not to be credible, for an international investigation?
You know what my answer is regarding international investigations, that there needs to be a mandate. Madame de la Varenne.
Monsieur Stéphane Dujarric. Yesterday I watched a reportage on France 2, and they were showing a lot of people from Gaza crossing the border of Egypt. Each of member of the family had to pay $5,000 to cross. Is it ethical? I mean, the border is crossed for the poor, and even those people are poor, actually, but they try to find the money to escape.
Listen, I haven't seen the same report that you have. We are not involved in the border crossing, but it is important that people who need to leave for medical reasons and what other reasons, that the same rules apply for everyone. Yes, sir.
Thank you. According to the Prosecutor General of Ukraine, Russia has used at least 24 ballistic missiles from North Korea to fire at Ukraine since the 30th of December. As a result of these attacks, 14 Ukrainian civilians were killed and more than 70 others were injured. Do you have any comment on that?
Well, I mean, we have repeatedly condemned the targeting of civilians and civilian infrastructure. On the reported use of weaponry from North Korea or any other country, we don't have the forensic ability. But what I would tell you is that it is important that all member states abide by the existing sanctions, and there are mechanisms within the Security Council to look at these issues. Michelle Nichols, on the screen, please.
Steph, just on Navalny, would the Secretary General consider an investigation carried out by Russian authorities to be credible?
I think it would be like, you know, our own people have often raised issues with our own investigations and audits before they happen, and I say people should reserve judgment. So that would be my answer as well.
Okay, and then just on something the SG said this morning in Munich, when you mentioned it as well, the situation in Gaza is an appalling indictment on the deadlock in global relations. Can you flesh that out for us? What does he mean when he talks about the deadlock in global relations?
He has said similar things, and even in more granularity, notably in Doha during the Doha Forum last December or November. Really, I think, pointing the finger at the lack of unity on the Security Council on issues such as the situation between Israel and Israelis and Palestinians, on Myanmar and other critical issues, and how that lack of unity has hampered our ability, the UN's ability, and the global community's ability to improve situations around the world. Jordan. Okay.
I have to start with Assalamu alaikum. If you allow me, I have one follow-up and one question on Libya. Can you hear me?
I can hear you. I can't see you, but I can hear you.
Yeah, well, I did not shave today. So
I'm sharing. If I share my video, the least you could do is share yours. But Jordan, I don't want to put you on the spot, so let's have your question.
Okay, sorry. Yesterday, the Security Council met on Libya, and then the Tahir al-Sunni, the ambassador of Libya to United Nations, criticized UNISMIL and the international community because they asked, they don't support. He asked them to support the national initiative and national leaders to carry the elections. Also, he said, this is why my question is, he said Libyans are tired of analysis, diagnosis, and the briefing statement without any result. Why do you think, if his, analysis is accurate, why do you think the Libyan or the world is angry with the United Nations now?
Well, the world may be a bit of an overstretch. I would refer you back, Jordan, I would refer you back to what Mr. Batili said very explicitly yesterday, and I think in terms that were refreshingly honest, frankly, for UN envoy, saying that the leaders on different sides of the political divide in Libya are not putting the interest of the Libyan people first and foremost. So it is not for Mr. Batili or the Secretary General to wave a magic wand and impose a solution. We are there to help the sides come to to a solution that will be the best for the people of Libya. Your second question.
If you allow me, first of all, to follow up on the same thing. I have read the 15 statement and Bitali statement, and I reported on it. Now, the Libyan saying that the mission is not doing what's supposed to do. This is what the Libyan are saying. Now, why you think the world in Africa and many missions in Mali are now tired of the United Nations? This is my question.
You're mixing. You want me to comment on all sorts of apples and oranges and other assorted fruit. Every situation is different. There are very likely political leaders in Libya who are not happy with the UN mission. That, to me, does not equate in any way with the UN mission not doing its job as a mediator, as trying to bring the parties forward. We can have an existential discussion on the other missions, but maybe we'll save it for another time. Did you have a second question, Jordan?
Yes, your answer is very fair enough. Thank you. For the second question, I asked you, this is my 10th time, if the SG has, as a per procedure, submitted the order of the ICJ to the Security Council.
Sorry, it's our bad for not giving you that answer. Well, let's do it before the end of business today.
Thank you. Thank you so much.
Yeah. Thank you. Okay, let's go back to Deji, then Stefano.
Yesterday, Secretary General, I think today, Secretary General talked about artificial intelligence in his speech in Munich. But yesterday, OpenAI announced a new technology, text to video. So all you need to do is describe. This is the video that generated.
I've seen it.
How much does the Secretary General worried about this new technology?
He's as worried about this new technology as he was with the previous technology, and I think things are being released into the wild without the proper safeguard.
Do you worried maybe one day you will see a stylish Stéphane Dujarric walk down the street of New York?
Whenever I walk down the streets of New York, I have a mirror with me, and I look at myself, and I say to myself, I'm very stylish. Okay. Stefano. I don't need AI to tell me that. Yeah.
Yes, on the speech today, the Secretary General again spoke about the reform of the Security Council. Just yesterday, the President of Brazil, Lula, said that the Security Council like this doesn't work, has to cancel the veto power. Now, said from Brazil that he's one of the candidates to permanent seat, I think is news. So I understand the Secretary General can, he doesn't have any power to influence eventually a reform. But he's been very vocal on saying on the necessity, and then he pushed for the African seat. What does he think about the last statement of President Lula?
What the Secretary General thinks is that member states need to redouble their efforts, take a cold, hard look at the reform of the Security Council, as it impacts directly the legitimacy of a lot of the work that we do, and that it is no longer representative of the diversity of the world in which we live in today. Thank you all. Can I say have a wonderful weekend? Because it is Friday, correct? Yes. Thank you. Goodbye.